Hello, homeschoolers, and welcome to the land of Yak Yak. My name is Laurel. Let's talk about assigning schoolwork in your homeschool. This is going to be a more general video. Otherwise, it's just going to be way too long. So I can make follow-up videos. If you, as I'm talking, have more specific questions, you want to see more specific answers or anything like that, just leave me a comment and I can follow up with you. So I'm going to make some assumptions here to base our discussion around. If you have found me, the algorithm is probably bringing birds of a feather together, right? We probably have some things in common and with our approach to homeschool and what our goals are. So I cannot say what to assign, obviously, for every theory, educational theory out there. It's going to be it's more specific to my way of doing things and my experiences and my way of thinking. So I hope it's helpful to you, and if it's what you're looking for. If it's not, it won't hurt my feelings. I'm going to break this conversation down into 3 parts. 1 is frame of mind. 2 is kind of some practical advice. And 3 is what to do when your student isn't meeting your expectations, like some things that you might consider. Number 1 for the frame of mind is, what is your overarching philosophy? Do you have an overarching educational philosophy or style that you prefer? So for us, I'd say there's 3. There is we're Christian, the Robinson curriculum method, right, is a long-term goal of ours, and developmental stage of children. So those 3 things are kind of my overarching umbrella. Another thing I would consider for your frame of mind is to, let go of anything that public schools are doing. As far as let go of state standards and things like that. Just let them go. To me, they're not helpful. And instead be goal oriented. And think of your long-term goals for your children in their academics. What do you want them to be able to do? You want them to be able to write essays. You want them to be able to analyze anything they read critically. You want them to be able to apply math to real-world situations, right, in the future. You want them to have an understanding of how nature and technology works. You also need to remember that there is more in the world. There is more knowledge than you don't have it all, right? And there's no way, even if you had it all, you would never have enough time or energy to teach it all to your kids. So you're gonna have to make your decisions on what is the most important things to focus on for your child. Have some discernment. And lastly, I would just say for your frame of mind, be flexible enough that things can change with the seasons. And I literally mean, in 2 ways. I literally mean one way, as in the actual seasons, like the 4 seasons. We feel physically different at different times of the year here in our homeschool. When it's darker, I let the kids sleep later, right? When they naturally are up with the sun, we're up, we start earlier. When we want to take advantage of swimming season and getting outside and going to the lake, I cut down how much time I'm willing to devote to seat work. We may bring a book and they got to listen to me read something on the beach, while they have a popsicle when they get out of the water. But so allow some flexibility with the seasons if that's something that speaks to you. I would also say you can set up your own little artificial seasons, like having, for me, summer, it just makes sense. It's kind of a natural learning block time. It's usually the time when, I'm always kind of behind the scenes researching things, reading things, mulling things, adjusting things, right? But also in the summer, it just seems like a natural time. I know that a lot of people that take, summers off or breaks in the summer, they have their pre-reading season where they're literally pre-reading all the books in their curriculum that their kids are going to do for the upcoming year. So they've already read it all so that they can have more meaningful discussions and not be like trying to catch up all the time with their kids. I think that's really a good idea if you have that type of curriculum that you work with. Like if you just have a preset, like this year we read these books and take these courses, I think it's a really good time to use that as a prep time. We don't really have that type of homeschool because we follow just more of a core. We have a core, book list, and you just get to it when you get to it. And I also allow for tradesies and skipping books and things here and there. So I'm never really quite sure what we're going to read in any given year. And because not every kid reads at the same pace. I let Everett make a choice. We added in a history, type reader. And so he really wanted to read that. That was important to him and compelling to him. So I'm letting him just keep reading it until it's done, even though it's really thick and taking a while, which I hadn't foreseen, right? So if I had read a whole bunch of, literature thinking he was going to read that, it wouldn't have been very effective. What we are doing this summer is my little artificial block is, this is a learning time for us. I'm introducing, I think it's a good time to, especially if you do year-round homeschool, introduce a new concept for your kids. So for younger kids, what if you're I want to teach them the syllables this summer, right? What are the syllable types? How to divide words into syllables? How do you read words syllable by syllable? And so maybe you have, I know I've shared a resource recently, that you take that time before you start your regular spelling, reading and spelling program again in the fall to just focus and drill down on this specific skill. For my rising 8th grader this summer, we are going through the seminar DVDs for teaching the classics. And I'm just having him, it's really meant for the teachers or the parent. I'm having him watch all the DVDs with me. He's going to get all the same information, all the examples and stuff with me. Because this is something new to us that I'm going to try to bring into our school this year, is this more of book talks. As we are getting closer to him being independent, and I'm going to be asking him to analyze literature on his own. I want to have this, I'm thinking ahead, this period of time where we are basically studying books together and having discussions about these books together before I have him do it independently. Anyway, so this is a learning block time for us this summer. Hopefully we'll be able to start applying it. Then it'll be the practicum time. It'll be the school year. Okay, let's talk about some of my advice for setting assignments. Okay, so you kind of got your frame of mind about your overarching philosophies. You've set long-term goals for abilities and content you want to cover. Maybe you've made a scope and sequence. You start charting something like that out. Before you start, let's say you have that scope and sequence, before you start picking your curriculum choices that will meet those goals and content, knowledge content, things you want them to have, you're going to want to consider their developmental stage. I'm not a classical homeschool, I'm not a classical teacher, but something I do really appreciate is the grammar, logic, and rhetoric developmental stage breakdown that the classical model works within. And I will link some videos for you if you want to hear more about that in the description box below. So I will let that presenter give you more of that information, but I think it's extremely helpful to keep in mind so that you're not asking too much too soon of your child and setting them up for failure. Let's say you have your subjects, right? Also, I should mention, we all have to work within our state laws, right? So you have certain subjects you're working within, I've got to present, stuff. I've got to teach these subjects every year. And you've got a scope and sequence that you've made, right, to go along with that roughly. But you always want to start simple and build up, obviously. I do think when I say simple, obviously we mean basic, but I also just mean the format. I think it's distracting when I'm picking assignments or curriculum choices or whatever, workbooks and stuff. All of them want to make things bright and colorful and beautiful because they think it'll draw the kid in. And on one hand, I kind of think it does, but I think it also is distracting a lot of times. Unless I'm actually teaching, showing them this is a piece of art or something, or I want them to create the beauty, I like to give them very plain pages and let them create something beautiful on it. You ever I don't want what they create to be competing with like professional artists on the page necessarily. So there's also the concept I like of going deeper instead of going broader. So instead of adding more and more and more subjects, just stick to what you have, but go be more detailed in it. Do more practice on it. Expect to work towards a higher level of mastery instead of, doing like 10 subjects or something. The way you go deeper, in my experience, is to allow for some rabbit trails and research to happen, right, by your children, because things come up and they're curious and they can research more, or like you just don't know the answer. That's fine. Like, just, you guys work together, like let them see you problem solving and like finding the answers and stuff. But also, especially with things like writing and like response questions and stuff like that, give them regular and detailed feedback. I mean, like daily, right? When they're younger, it's usually you're sitting, literally a lot of times when they're really young, you're sitting right next to them. So the minute I see my kid write a B as a D, I'm like, erase it quick. That was a D. We want a B. Down and around, right? When it's my middle son, my like 8-year-old, he may be to the point where he's writing like a 1-sentence response to a question. And then he's bringing, as soon as he's done with his lesson, he's bringing it to me to get immediate feedback and correction. And like my oldest son, it's at the end of the day, because we do writing every day, and he's bringing me his notebook and I am giving him feedback at the end of the day. And then on top of that, we are setting specific goals for them to put into action the next day. So for like my child is reversing their B's and the D's, we're gonna say, okay, like he might need to go back. We might do a whole line of B's, right? And for boy, and draw a boy. We might do a whole line of writing D's and draw a dog or something, right? B, D, B, D, B. We might do B, D. Like we'll just do some practice, right? And we'll say, let's work really hard tomorrow. Really stop and think about B's and D's, right? I might even write a sticky note and put it on the next day's notebooking page that B and D, right? Let's say for my middle son, he's not writing incomplete sentences. He's answering in a partial, sentence. We will talk about, okay, like you're leaving out the subject, right? Let's review what subject and predicate parts of the sentence are. So when they ask, where was the main character during this part of the story, when you just wrote on the boat, if I just read on the boat, I wouldn't know what you were talking about, right? Where is your subject? What or who is on the boat? I don't know if it's a person, an animal, an item. I don't know. So we'll discuss that and I'll have him rewrite it usually right away. But we may make a note for the next day. The goal is to answer in complete sentences. Don't forget your subject, who or what. I might be writing that and stick it on his next day's notebooking page. You get the idea, right? Something that's helpful with my oldest son, his writing notebook has when it gets to the composition day, has a writing rubric in it, and that is helpful because they know what I'm looking for, what I'm grading for, and then it helps us to set goals for the next time as well. And since it's graded, we can see if those numbers are like over time going up for those different sections. So you can just stay on one and just, it really helps you to establish like what is the weak point and, or weak points, but focus on like one at a time too. And when they get mastered, you can start working on another weak point, right? So we want to also, in picking assignments, so you may be assigning this yourself. Like, so for me, some of what I do at different stages is I'm creating the assignment myself, saying I want you to do this, 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 this. I assign exactly what it is. And you could totally do it that way too. That's like the most customized way, right? I also pick curriculum, right, choices that they are working out of, like certain workbooks, or like our readers have, like Everett's, McGuffey reader has exercises in it. He's doing from that, questions from out of there. William's working in right now in an easy peasy reader. There are reading questions in that. So whatever there is, be careful that, make sure you're picking resources that are moving them towards independence. Be very careful that you're not continuing to choose courses, like all their subjects, that you're picking curriculum or courses that are parent led, like all of them for all of your children, because there's just not enough time. There's not enough time in the day or energy, right? I would also suggest combining certain subjects into assignment form when you can. For example, when they're little, you can do handwriting and grammar together, right? They could be doing copy work and then going back and finding all the nouns or finding all the punctuation and telling you what it means or something. A really natural one is literature and essay writing, right? Read something, write about it. One of my just favorite assignments, especially in things like science, if they're reading some kind of science textbook, is teach them how to take notes. And their assignment is the note taking, not some extra thing necessarily. Note taking is a really helpful skill, and it makes them slow down and review their material, especially if you have to write some kind of summary at the end. We like the Cornell method of note taking ourselves. You can do that same thing with history, especially as they get older. Just like if they're reading a history book daily, have them just be taking notes as they're reading, or writing a summary of what they read when they're done. My oldest, I told you he's been reading that history book. It's really big, but I've been having him just like a simple kind of notebooking page, but it's just either like a biography kind of outline page or an event or a place. And he can pick which one makes the most sense for what he read and fill that out. And of course, like I said, I'm encouraging cross-referencing for that. So he'll go to like the encyclopedia and cross-reference what he read in his book. Another fun one is like science and public speaking, like anything in public speaking. If you want them to get practice at that skill, just whatever they're covering, just tell them they've got to give a presentation on it at the end of the week and let them get prepared. Okay, so those are my practical what to assign kind of things. I know it's very vague. Like I said, you guys have seen a lot of what we actually do, because I make day in the life videos. I do our notebook. When we finish a notebook, I do a flip through so you can actually see the work that my kids have done. I do plan with me videos where I am setting up their notebooks or planning out their work in my planner or whatever. So you guys have probably seen a lot of the kind of things that I do. I also, a while back, made a couple videos. I think like a writing path video, and I believe I made one called a playlist called math sequences. I think they're in my language arts playlist, and I think I have a math sequences. And that's what I was doing at the time, was like taking you guys through my exact plan. I wasn't in my notebooking era yet then, exactly. So it's probably still it's still me. It's still like similar thoughts, but I've evolved over time. You're trying to make things. Of course, I think how I'm doing it now is better than how I was doing it then. So, but there's some more information there. I'll link those playlists if you want to see them. So what about when your student is not meeting your expectations? Which, let's be honest, is a lot. The number one thing you have to check is, are your expectations reasonable? And go back to that developmental stage, right? Are you assigning work that's are you in the correct developmental stage? Even though something is a curriculum sometimes and it says that it's for second grade, third grade, when you compare it against those like developmental stages, like the grammar stage, you might be like, they're really this is actually not grammar level stuff. This is actually more logic level stuff. I think they're asking a little too much of the kids in this one. So just be mindful of that. You also need to be mindful that they actually understand the instructions given. A lot of times when you're explaining it to them, right, and you've shown them examples and you've sat next to them, right, you train them yourself on certain things. And so that is a little more foolproof because you're making sure that they understand as they go before you step back. But sometimes if you're just like handing them a workbook, or you're like, okay, just do this workbook, they may not understand the instructions. Like I know that happened with William and I, like I wanted to start gentle grammar, and just because like resources will be like level 1, 2, 3, 4. That doesn't mean like first, second, third, fourth grade necessarily. So it just means that's the first level that they produced, right, for that resource line. But I remember I think it was like second grade, I thought he could start gentle grammar level 1, and he couldn't. He needed just to stick with copy work and my grammar complement, that I do with him with his copy work, and his reading comprehension was not at a level that he could, even though they're simple instructions, that he could understand what they were teaching him and apply it to the practice. So I would have had to sit there with him and do it with him, but I'm like, I can't, I don't want to. I wanted that to be something that could be used independently. So I just waited until third grade, and we started it in third grade, and it was much, much better. And they get better over time. The more they do something, they get better at it. They get better at understanding instructions over time. You have to let them try, though. So do they understand the instructions? Are there holes in their education that need to be addressed before they can move on? So I remember when, and this happened, to me this is really, it hasn't happened so much with my younger two because I've homeschooled them the whole time, and I know every single thing we've covered. I do not move forward until they can do the thing, right? Like, we're not going to move on to combination sentences before they can write a simple sentence, correct? But I did have issues with this, and I actually kind of feel like I still do, with my oldest, because he was public schooled through third grade. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I couldn't send him to public school anymore. And I brought him home, and I just put him into Abeka, fourth grade, right? And I even got like the streaming, like the classes, like the teacher was like teaching the little class. Basically, it's just like school at home, right? Replicated, but he was not up to that level of work. I realized very quickly, especially things like his spelling, his grammar, like everything. So there were holes, his math, that I had to try to figure out what he was deficient in. Why couldn't he do this level of work? Because he was missing some underlying skill, very basic understanding or skill. So he wasn't able to like really fully be successful in what they were asking him to do. I think I kind of addressed this in my RC rollout video. I'll try to find that and link that for you too. I just kind of talked about, kind of giving them some sort of assessment to look at, and then you decide what you think you need to work on first. But so yeah, if you are bringing a kid home from school, from a public school situation or something, like assess where they are. Don't just assume that they're on like whatever curriculums consider grade level, right? Another thing to consider is the schoolroom distracting? We have a rule about no toys in the schoolroom. I recently actually had a TV in here. We took it out because the kids wouldn't when I would leave the room, wouldn't stop turning it on. And even conversations in the schoolroom. So like when my oldest is trying to write or read or something, especially when he's trying to write, because writing is, it takes a lot to gather your thoughts and like think it through, whatever concept you're working on, try to put it on paper, try to remember all the grammar rules and how do you spell this. It's a lot. Well, if I'm over there chatting it up with his younger brother, one of his younger brothers on their lesson, that can be really distracting for him. Or like the youngest is just getting kind of goofy and just starts being distracting. So even just each other can be really distracting. If I have to sit in here, it helps for me to physically be in the room. I really do have to be in the schoolroom. If I have to leave the schoolroom for something, a lot of times I will take my youngest, my 6-year-old with me. Like, okay, let's go make lunch, and you're my helper. You don't leave him in here. He will immediately stop working and start annoying his brothers. So that's just the reality of kids. So my oldest, right, if he's having a hard time focusing, he'll just say, Mom, can I go in the dining room or whatever and do his writing in there, where it's a little quieter. It's like the next room over. There's a wall between us. And I do not let him go to his room. I have made the mistake more than once of saying, sure, go ahead, read in your room, and then checking back later and he's like totally asleep in there. He's like just falling asleep. Yes, or they're like trying to play Minecraft or something on their computer. So no, I don't let them go in their room. It's too distracting. Do they have short-term goals? Do they know what the goals are? Remember you like set long-term goals and then you set, interim steps to achieve. But do the kids know what their goals are? Do they have any personal goals? Are all of your goals too long-term? Have you not made little baby steps to get from point A to point B? You may need to break up. You may have been making too big of leaps between things. You may need to break it up. Are you taking too many breaks from school? Or too long of breaks from school? I submit to you considering year-round homeschooling so that your kids don't lose their momentum. And we all know about the summer backslide, but in the RC program, Dr. Robinson even talks about just like even over the weekend, taking 2 full days off of math, it's hard to get back going again. If you're going to be doing that year round, you still are going to be taking breaks during the school year, but just be mindful to don't take like a whole month off or something, or have them keep reading over break or so, I don't know, or just lighten it up at certain times of the year. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, you still have to do a math lesson a day and read your book, right? It's easier, but you don't have to do vocabulary and you don't have to do writing or something, Also, breaks during the day. If I let the kids go outside for lunch, which I like to do, say have lunch and go outside and play for a little bit. If I get sidetracked, because sometimes I get sidetracked, I start doing some chore or this is the worst, my mom calls and I just want to talk to my mom. I'll just be sitting outside watching the kids play, talking to my mom, and I realize I've been on the phone for 2 hours. And I'm like, I gotta go back to school. After they've been out there, they don't want to come back to school. In their mind, they're already checked out. They're out of school mode. So I would try to take, I do brain breaks between lessons, especially for older kids, at least every hour or so. I definitely sometimes I force my oldest. I'm like, no, you go ride your bike around the block. You have to take a little break and come back. So I am for breaks, but being mindful that they're not too long and that they are losing their momentum or they're backsliding. Are you not giving them enough feedback? Are you just saying, oh, okay, that's done. Okay, star, and not actually looking at the quality of the work? Are you maybe not holding them to a high enough regular standard on a daily basis? I always have this motto how you do anything is how you do everything. And I'm really trying to instill in my kid that virtue of, a work ethic, right? Hard work. And anything worth doing is worth doing well. And school is worth doing. This is your schoolwork. Don't be sloppy. Don't turn in sloppy work to me. This is your final product. Show some respect for your teacher, your mom. Give me something I can read, and that I can enjoy reading. We deserve to give each other our best in here. I show up every day. I give you my best. Give me your best. I don't expect you guys to be perfect. But, give me what you got, right? I'll give you what I got. Do they need inspiration, motivation, maybe even? So inspiration and motivation, a little bit different, right? Inspiration is it's wanting to be something for the sake of being it. And motivation is more wanting to get something, like a reward. I try to use both. Inspiration can be harder to find, but you can find it even through carefully finding, movies of inspirational academics, scientists, writers, entrepreneurs, and you can show them these things and say, this is what we're working towards. This is what we're trying to prepare you. Look at what these people, look at this cool thing. Filmmakers, they're artists, right? These people are artists and they put their talents into really making you feel a way in a movie. So if you can find a movie that you approve of that can tap into their heart and channel them. What's the one I loved was was it with the little boy in Africa who made the windmill so they could run a pump for water for their crops? I love that movie. Something about the wind. What is that called? Anyways, I think that's a really good inspirational movie about figuring out how to figure it out. And he went to books for knowledge, right? But he didn't give up. Really inspiring. film, right? I think there was a book first, but we watched the movie. Motivation. So there's a couple motivational things we do. Whenever we finish, you guys know we use notebooking, right? Each kid has their own notebook and at their own developmental level. I check it every day and give them their feedback. When they're done with the whole notebook, it represents so much work, so much accomplishment. We have a party, like a little family party. We have a little celebration. And they have a couple choices. Like I can bake them something, right? That we can have like after dinner. They can pick what I make for dinner, like within reason. If they want, sometimes or they may want to go to the Dollar Tree and they can get anything at the Dollar Tree. But we have our little, so they usually go for baked goods. They usually want a cake. It seems like what people usually want is a cake. And so we'll have dinner. We'll set it up as a special time. We'll have dinner, we'll have cake, we'll have their notebook out. My husband will look through it and ooh and ah over it and ask questions. And, Bo will want to show him certain things that he was the most proud of. We've definitely tried to motivate them with there's going to be this positive affirmation of their work and their accomplishments at the end. But also take pictures on our phones and send them to the grandparents of certain things that they want to show their grandparents in their notebook. Another little trick that has been kind of motivational is to have a student-led day. So I'll be like, pay attention because on Friday, you're going to teach me this stuff. And it kind of turns into a Friday review, right, of something. Oh yeah, because he actually loves, my little list, he loves to be the teacher. He loves to be the one that's in charge, right? And so he may have me read to him that day and he's going to check and make sure I don't make any mistakes. And he's going to write things on the board for me. And so that's something that kind of motivates him to pay attention. I'm pay attention to this because you got to be able to teach me on Friday. And then we also have, right now he's working on a chart, a sticker chart. And I just made him he really wanted a new Iron Giant toy. He's always asking me to buy him stuff, just constantly. A way for me to put the brakes on that is to say, well, if you want that, you can earn it. If you do 30 days of getting all your schoolwork done every day for 30 days, then you can have that as a reward. As long as it's something that's within, reason, what you can afford. But I just will grab a picture off of Amazon or something and paste it into a PowerPoint document and then make a little trail. And then when he gets the okay from me, I'll give him a sticker at the end of the day and he can put a sticker on there. And when he gets to the toy, then he can get the toy. Motivation. My older two boys are more motivated by earning game time. So they can play something that's game-like that they can play sometimes during the week is their Duolingo. They're both, and they're always I'm not playing, I'm learning German. So they're both doing German, but it kind of feels like a game. They select ding, right? And they earn badges or whatever in that little program. So they can play that, but they want to play their video games or whatever on Saturdays or game day. And so as long as they're getting their stuff done, they can have game time on Saturday. I think I'm letting them have an hour now between the two of them. So, but they also know that they can lose. Game time is a privilege. It's not a right. And they can lose that privilege by not being on top, not getting their stuff done. They have to finish their weekly work. If they don't finish their weekly work, they might have to do it on Saturday before their game time. So it's up to them if they want to have to do it before their game time, or they could just stay on task and get their stuff done during the week. This is my last one for if they're not meeting your expectations. It has to do with their mindset and their feelings. And I'm sure this isn't you, right? I'm sure this isn't you, but just in case, are you conveying a spirit of resentment at having to homeschool your kids or be home with your kids? Because they pick up on that. And sometimes you may not mean to, but if it's in your heart, that's really how you feel. I guarantee they feel it. And you might even be literally saying it. Be careful. And if you have said things, or if you feel like you're putting off an error of resentment towards having to be at home with your kids or having to homeschool them, tell them you're sorry and tell them that that's wrong of you and that sometimes it's hard to be a parent and to homeschool, and that they're worth everything, all the effort, and that they're going to be fine, they're going to be okay, and that if you guys are having a rough patch, that you'll get through it together, and that there's still time, and that if they're having a hard time, picking up on something or mastering something, that when they're ready, that they will. Let them know the things that like that we know that when children are developmentally ready, they will learn it if it's given to them. So don't worry. We just don't always know exactly what the exact time that's going to happen for every child, but let them know. Don't be scared. You're not stupid or or anything, that when it's time, it'll happen. Okay. I always talk way too long about stuff like this. I'm so sorry. Let me know in the comments if you have any more specific questions about anything we talked about, or any subjects, or like any assignments that you're thinking of assigning, or if you're not sure of. I will always give you, I'm your friend, I'll always give you my best. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.